welcome to our regularly scheduled podcast, and our guest today is Greg, who has got a great new movie that he's going to tell us about, and he's a great musician. And Greg, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Bob. Welcome. Thanks for having me. It's very cool to be asked to hang out with cool dudes.
Well,
I'm gonna get rid of the glasses.
Once we become cool, we'll ask you again. So, okay.
All right, sounds good.
And Mark, say hi.
Greg, Eric Johnson, thrilled to meet you. I've been watching your videos. I've checked out the websites. I think I may get an education today.
All right, that sounds good. I'm happy to do my part.
Okay, at some point I want to get into your storied musical career, but I'd like to start by talking about the movie which just premiered, I think, a week ago or so.
Last Sunday.
And tell us about the movie, how you got involved, and about Sensitive Men Rising.
Sure, it'd be my pleasure. Yeah, so as you said, the movie is called Sensitive Men Rising, and it is actually a follow-up to a 2015 film called Sensitive: The Untold Story, which featured Alanis Morissette. And it's based on a book by Dr. Elaine Aron, who back in about 1995 or so, really kind of honed in on a trait that had been talked about for a long time, but she finally kind of honed in on it and did a lot of scientific research to verify this trait, which we call sensory processing sensitivity. And essentially it's just keeping it in really simple terms, that everyone all humans and most mammals fall into three basic categories, which we could just say as being very highly sensitive, average sensitivity, or low sensitivity. And so the portion that she really honed in on is those folks that are more highly sensitive. And there were certain characteristics that she found that were fairly consistent, and started this now 25 plus year process of trying to understand how we can better deal with sensitivity or high sensitivity, say, in society, to create better leaders, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So Sensitive Men Rising was a way to hone in on that aspect more predominantly within men. So one of the things that she talks about is that most of the world's difficulties really come from a certain kind of male characteristic, and just the basic concept that a different kind might be able to change that. And so just looking at that possibility that maybe as we understand sensitivity more, and understand the benefits, and then be able to overcome the presumed difficulties, that perhaps we can create better leaders, and just it might be better for society in general. So we posit that as a possibility, and then explore a lot of stories from around the world, men in all different levels of leadership or not, all different elements of society. We have scientists, we have musicians, we have politicians, we have everyday men on the street, we have actors, just a whole range. In fact, there were far more people that we were able to interview than we actually had time to show well in the movie. So my hope is that we end up doing a series of movies, or having some sort of follow-up, because there's just so much going on. So I got involved with the movie. I'm one of the co-producers, and I got involved initially because I was asked to be interviewed as a highly sensitive man myself. Bob, as you know, you've been doing music since about 1989 or so. I think you recorded my first concert, and then what we found was that my emotions are big and they're very present, and when I'm performing, they just leap out. So I got a reputation early on as someone that cries, and at first I got some grief for that. There were, many people who said, dudes aren't supposed to cry. That's not a good thing, So you should just hide that. And I said, no, I'm going to embrace it. I don't understand why my emotions are so present when I'm performing, but they are, and it's the deal. So on my first bigger recording, I wrote on it that I find that I cry a lot these days, sometimes of joy, sometimes of sadness, but always of love and belonging. So that kind of became part of the consistent theme throughout my career leading up to this movie.
So you were first so you're a co-producer, but first you were interviewed for it.
Yeah.
How did the larger role happen? And I know you contributed music as well.
Yeah, indeed. Well, it's interesting. So the director producer of this film is a gentleman named Will Harper, who happens to be my sister-in-law's brother. So we had met each other, 30 years ago at my brother's and his sister's wedding, and we found that we had just a nice connection. And so later on, when he heard about my music and so forth, he just asked me if I would be willing to just sit for an interview as just out of curiosity. And at the time, I had heard about highly sensitive people, but didn't really know much. I just knew a little bit, and I hadn't really gotten deep into the concept that I, in fact, am a highly sensitive man. But during the process of that interview, as he asked me questions, I could feel this wave of emotion coming up, this realization of like, oh my God, there's a lot of who I am and how I have done what I've done and why I've done what I've done that seems to be down this track. So then, of course, I started studying more, and the aha moments became more and more prevalent, and I realized, oh yeah, this is definitely, I am definitely, even though most highly sensitive people are a little bit more introverted, I'm very extroverted. So at first I thought, well, that must be something different. But as it turns out, about 30% of highly sensitive people are more extrovert, as what we would classify extroverted. So
there's hope for me.
There's hope for everybody. So I mean, one of the key things.
And in that context, that there's hope for everybody, can I throw you a slight curve?
Sure.
I think this concept is wonderful. I'm not sure how it gets out to the world at large and communicated in such way, because we've all been so programmed, as she said earlier, to see things through the male filter, which often, when you talk about leaders, is influenced by power and holding on to that power, where this is almost could be threatening. But what I enjoy about it is that somebody has intellectualized it, and there's another world out there, and people have more potential and capabilities, but unless they're triggers to act as a catalyst to bring that to the surface, we're still trapped in our programming. Am I off the deep end?
No, you're exactly right. And again, part of our hope is that we can help start a conversation. So just to think of things in a slightly different frame of reference than the quote unquote traditional male roles, female roles, non-binary roles, et cetera, but just simply go that this phenomenon of how we process information is across the board. It's in equal parts, throughout all genders and throughout all societies, every place on the earth. All the scientists in the film, they've done a lot of research worldwide, and it's it seems fairly consistent. And again, through another 100+ species of mammals, it is also consistent. So by being able to just again start a conversation that has just a slightly different frame of reference, we allow for the possibility that maybe we can get someplace different without starting out from the traditional pigeonholes of how we are supposed to take in and put out information. So,
Well, I think artists may be initially the ticket. I noticed online that you and I are of a similar vintage age, and growing up in the late '60s, there was moments of the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Act, Woodstock, the music that was coming up that was hopeful, suggesting during the Vietnam War that there's a place for peace and love. And all of a sudden, this was all blossoming, and then it just went away. And I was thinking that might have been one of those times in the timeline where this could take a step forward. But here we are again, a half century later, trying to find out where the inroads are to reach a world out there that might benefit from thinking this through a little further.
yeah,
Well, certainly toxic masculinity is sort of ascendant, but I mean, in terms of how you get the message out, obviously this movie is part of trying to get the word out to the word out to the world at large. Could you answer that question? But I'd love to have you talk about where people might be able to see the movie, if it'll stream. I know you did a live debut in San Francisco, but will it be available to the world at large?
yes, we did do a preliminary screening for basically family and friends, because we wanted to put a stake in the ground, and then now we're looking at whether we go down the track of film festivals. So we're trying to get into one, which hopefully I'll be able to announce shortly, or to actually just look for independent distribution for a period of time, and then while we seek bigger distribution through Prime or something like that. So we'll be able to announce it very soon that it will be available. And I have to say the film is very strong. It's very good. It's well founded. The information is again, Dr. Erin herself is one of the primary writers, and she's very involved with the film. So it goes back to the source, and it's done in a way that, as a documentary, chock full of information and honest stories, it also has what we think is enough of a cinematic touch so that it moves along. It's a full-length feature, and it moves very well, and it will start the conversation. We were blessed to be able to get Peter Coyote to tell a little bit of his own personal story and to narrate this film for us. And then Alanis Morissette decided to come back as now as a highly sensitive mom of two highly sensitive boys. So she tells her story from the point of view of her kids. And then we have actor Luke Goss, who's he's been in just a zillion films as generally as a bad guy, and so it's a really interesting juxtaposition that his persona is a very highly sensitive and very feeling, caring, empathetic man who is the exact opposite of all the characters that he plays in like all the Hellboy movies and so forth. And then we have one of the top psychology podcasters in the world, Scott Barry Kaufman, who gives again that sort of psychological foundation of how how masculinity can work, and how as we are able to get the message of sensitive leadership, sensitive a more sensitive approach to things, that how that can really benefit. And then on and on, we have, we have even like, there's a young gentleman named Sorbono Isaac Berry, who's a 12-year-old math genius. He's considered the youngest professor in the world. This is a kid that got a near perfect SAT a couple weeks ago, and at age 12, he's being courted by all the Ivy League colleges, and I don't know where he's going to end up going, but yeah, he's one of the points is that, because someone, I've heard comments, well, he's just a very gifted kid. Yeah, he's very gifted, and he's also just highly sensitive. He feels things so deeply.
You know what I'm kind of picking up from this within your heightened sensitivity is simply maybe the whole common denominator is that we have the capacity to be multidimensional.
Yes.
We perceive the male in a certain context, and yet what you're offering here is it can be so much more. And
yes,
this 12-year-old person is not just a brilliant person. He's probably somebody with thoughts, feelings, a way of looking at all kinds of things differently. And what I think part of this is that one of our underlying strengths is the potential to understand our multiple dimensionality. And what you're suggesting here is dialing in and not so much exploiting it, but understanding it and taking it someplace that goes beyond you and benefits others.
Yeah, that's, I find that the first step in people that I've talked to during the process of making this film is so many, and I'll just say sensitive men because that's predominantly who we talked with, at first can't find a way to accept their sensitivity as being a positive thing, as being a good thing, or even just as a thing. There's so often the sense that like being sensitive, being easily overstimulated or easily feeling things that in some fashion, based on societal norms, that's a negative, that's thought of as a weakness, rather than, first off, if we just say that it is a thing, it's not necessarily weak or positive, it's just present. It is just an absolute scientifically based part of us. And then finding the tools to, we call them, just coping mechanisms, to be able to accept that, and then be able to then find a way to empower ourselves within that. So there's it's a little mnemonic that Dr. Aaron created called DOES, and so it's a real easy way to think about. So D, which stands for deep thinking, or depth of processing, and then O, which stands for overwhelmed, because sometimes highly sensitive people are easily overwhelmed, and then E for empathetic, which can be the balance to the overwhelm, and then S for sensitivity to subtleties. So what I find is that being able to, in conversations with people, being able to pick up on really subtle cues about what the other person is feeling and thinking, we're able to, if we take the time to use that to understand them, then we can engage in much better conversations, much deeper conversations, much more meaningful conversations, much more purposeful, conversation that gets us somewhere. So it's.
You mean we have to actually listen to the other person?
Yeah, and not listen to just the words, but listen to what the body's saying. Listen to, look in their eyes, look at what's actually going on. And so in that way, as I say, once we accept that within ourselves, and then be able to use that as a tool to be able to then accept other people better, to me, it feels like a real format or a real foundation, I would say, for better communications, better processing. And then, ultimately, in my opinion, it would lead to better better potential laws, the way Congress can work, or the way governments can work, the way businesses can work, the way families can work. Just the whole thing is, there's a possibility that we can do it better because we can get down deeper into it.
When I saw the trailer, two words kept popping up in my mind when they showed the cavemen and having to interpret their surroundings and then transform that into some sort of action. But it's a military term, but I think it's something that would be appropriate for all of us in life, which I'm trying to embrace. And I'm just wondering if this is part of the sensitivity, is simply situational awareness.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that makes sense. And that's, so it's like, a lot of times I think we go through life where we're fighting so hard just to keep up with what's going on, or to get our bills paid, or to use the metaphor, to feed our families, that we miss that there's information that's available to us to help us actually accomplish the things that we actually need to do. And there's, I mean, not to get too esoteric or too spiritual about it, but there does feel like there is this kind of universal connectiveness, possibilities that that we can make better decisions because we become more aware of what's actually going on, not just the little bits that that it's easy to pick up, but the things that are the things that are a little more subtle. Sometimes I'll have situations where three seemingly completely random events suddenly come together as being, oh no, they were preliminary parts of something that I needed to be able to do at a particular time. But being aware of them, it was like, then when that time came, I was able to use those events.
Greg, Bob, you wanted to go into Greg's music story.
Yeah,
history.
Greg, I'd love to have you talk about your music journey. When I met you, you were a tech bro.
Yeah.
And how you unleashed your music career, and then sort of segue into the music for the film that you created.
Yeah, it's interesting. I ever since I was, as long as I can remember, I think I got my first drum set when I was 5, and I always wanted to do music in some fashion, but there was a push, family, et cetera, to go more into business, go into to study more about having a profession. That led me to become I was in the corporate world for, I don't know, 20 some years. And I was able to find a level of success in that world, but I always wanted to, what I really wanted to do was do music. And so, even there was while I worked for Odyssey Records, so I was around a lot of great musicians. I got to go to just a zillion concerts. And I was always, during that time, I wanted to be a composer. I wanted to be a performer. And I just, I always feel like I kind of I shouldn't say wasted, but I spent a long time not doing what I really needed to do. And then circumstances put me into a situation where I kind of had no choice. I was just emotionally overwhelmed by my life, and my daughter was, I raised my daughter, and she was going off to college, and my wife at the time, we were going our separate ways, and everything just seemed like turmoil. And then finally came down to like, okay, if I don't do some music now, I'm gonna just lose it. So it was, I was fortunate enough to, first, who is the gentleman who our mutual friend, Pete, who passed away recently, a few years back. I forgot his name already. Great guy. Anyway, I'll think of it. But anyway, he helped me kind of get directed. And then you and I, we you know, we got connected, and it finally was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. So I started writing some music, and at the time it was very, you know, I didn't really know much of what I was doing. I just knew that I had a lot of feeling.
Pete with the recording studio?
Yeah.
Slauson, Pete Slauson.
Yes, yes, yes. Love that man.
Yeah.
Love that man. So he, you know, he was one of the first ones to give me, you know, or to encourage me to give myself permission to just follow this path that was not an easy path, of course, but to follow this path to to get out there and write and to perform. And I found early on too that I was not a good session player. So even though I did do some session work early on, but that wasn't really my direction. I knew that if I was going to have a life that felt correct to me, and if I was going to make my ways in music at all, it was going to be as a composer. So I started writing, and I wrote more, and eventually I started writing for, you know, some other people, and start forming my own group, going all the way back to, I guess that was like about 1990. I think I had my first we were a trio first, and then we expanded. We used to play at the old 4th Street Tavern in San Rafael. That
Wow.
little, yeah, it was like this little, you know, it was a dive in those days. No offense, whoever connected, but it was, you know, it was like, it was just a great place to start. And we started doing Monday nights, and I played every Monday night for like 3 years straight. And over time, the band got better. You know, I got better. Songs became better, and then we started having lots of people come and join us, and it got to a point where after a while, anybody that was coming to town to do a bigger show would come hang out with us on Monday night and sit in. And so I got to meet a lot of my heroes just by virtue of the fact that I had this cool ensemble going. So that's how I got started. And so once I made the commitment to write, then that's everything that I've done since then, including, you know, I've taught for about 25 years or so. So I've taught a lot of great musicians, you know, a lot of kids who've gone on to become great musicians. And it was from the standpoint of, I love music, I love creating it, and then I've helped them do the same thing. So then my bands have evolved over the years, and I had this great band more recently, right before COVID, called Glass Brick Boulevard, and that was kind of the quintessential. And our music is out, you know, all over the place. It's still available. I'm not pushing it so much, but it's definitely there. And
Go ahead.
What's that?
Go ahead. You can sell it.
Go ahead and push.
Well, you know, the thing is, I had these great experiences with some of the most amazing players. So I have a long-term friend, Rob Fordyce, who's one of the most amazing bass players on the planet. Who's, you know, he's a quiet guy, but he's doing some stuff still. But he's on dozens of recordings with me. And then over the years, had different drummers. Had Greg Ganaway, Gigi, the infamous Gigi. He's out there someplace. And then Celso Alberti, who we were together for about 5 years, and he's just, you know, as good as they get, and others. And then we even had, let's see, we had a bassoonist of all things for a long time. Yeah, and it was, God, this guy, he's so great. And we played for a long time, and then finally, I think Billy Cobham heard him on one of our shows, and so he stole him away. So I think they're still touring.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was a great ensemble with, yeah, and then various other people would sit in with us. So so then, as I said, so COVID kind of slowed things down, and I thought I was going to retire at that point and just, you know, just be a grandfatherly teacher with, you know, I still have 20 or so students around the world. So we started doing Zoom lessons because of COVID, and still am doing that. And then I have some in person as well. So, by the way, the bassoonist was Paul Hansen. I realized I didn't mention his name. And
Okay.
this I bow to Paul. He's so good. Anyway, so then COVID's over and blah blah blah, and then as I said, my conversations with Will Harper after I did the interview for the film, then we started talking about some musical ideas, and I thought, okay, well, I can help with that for sure. And so I ended up writing what ended up being the theme for the film, and then a couple of other pieces within it. So so my imprint on the film it's kind of everywhere. So
And is the music your solo piano or an ensemble, or for the film, I mean?
Actually, Rob Fordyce, bass player, and I, we did a couple things together just as a duo, and it worked really well. So it's so they become like threads that weave through the film without. So it's like it's my own form of ear candy. They weave through. You don't notice it, but then it's in your head, and you don't forget it. So it's nice. I'm very proud. Yeah. And so now, after we actually recorded this work in Laughing Tiger Studios in San Rafael, which is my favorite studio. And now I'm inspired, and I have a bunch of work that some of my best songs that we performed that were never actually recorded. So that'll be my next venture, is to, while promoting the film and taking that around, also will start my next Glass Brick Boulevard recording.
And you're one of the producers of the film.
Yes.
I would encourage you to get on the film festival circuit. I had involvement with the Tiburon Film Festival for about 10 years. And there literally is a 12-month calendar of film festivals all across the United States, some more significant than others. But what a great way to tell your story and meet audiences and get the word out. And then if something clicks and like a large distributor picks up on it, you never know.
Yes, well, that's the vision. I'm gonna.
It's
I
a good
believe,
vision.
yeah, I believe this movie. It has substance and it has purpose. And as I told my grandkids, this felt like all of the work that I did in the corporate world, and then all of the work that I did in the music world, kind of came together to make it so that when this movie presented itself, I was able to throw myself into it.
Wow.
Okay, well, we have about 3 minutes and change left. Greg, I'm curious to ask. You have as you mentioned, you have grandkids. You've got a 12-year-old who's in the film. Based not just on the Sensitive Man theme, but also your music journey. What would you tell a 12-year-old, or however old your grandkids are, how to manifest their inner self? You've done a great job of doing that, and I'm thrilled to have been involved with that a little bit when you get out of corporate life. But do you have a message you can leave us with?
Absolutely. The first thing is, don't stop. So I know there are so many forces that or there's so many messages that we get every day that say, okay, well, you don't do this, you should do this because it's easier, or that it's the way that it's supposed to be, it's more conventional. But sometimes our lives are not meant to be straightforward and conventional, and sometimes we have something within us that we need to get out. And if we do it, and if we give ourselves the opportunity to do it, even though the odds may be against it, more times than not, the world benefits from that. So it's not only just to help ourselves, but to help everyone else. So it's hard because, our society isn't really set up to support the arts or to support individual creativity or individuality in any form. So we have to be able to pull together the resources and being willing to ask for help, being willing to say what you have to say, and not be afraid. I mean, be afraid, but do it anyway. So I just know so many over the years. As I've produced other people, I've known so many great singers, songwriters, etc., that gave up, like, in my opinion, 1 minute too soon. Like, just when they could have actually really made a difference, circumstances beat them down and they gave up. And that's, I wish that things were set up differently, but they're not.
We're about to go run out of time. Greg, it's a thrill having you on here. We'd love to probably talk to you down the line again if you're up for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Once the film's out, I'll let you know.
Excellent. Guys, thank you so much. Greg, thank you. And in the words of the new writers, keep on keeping on.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, guys.